Welcome to Penumbra. The conversation starts now. Good afternoon and welcome to Penumbra. I have a very special guest with me today, Mike Pearson, who is a commercial risk insurance advisor with the Baldwin Group here in Tampa, Florida. And before he got into the insurance business, Mike was a Hall of Fame athlete at the University of Florida playing left tackle for the Gators back during the Spurrier days, as we Gator fans like to refer to that as the good old days. Mike, thanks for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me on, and appreciate you giving me an opportunity to share a little bit of the story and the background, and always enjoy catching up.
Absolutely. So, just to get started, Mike, we're just going to kind of go through your origin story of basically what made Mike Pearson who he is today, but just general ground strokes. Where'd you grow up?
Right there at Armwood, and born and raised in this area. My wife and I are from here, high school here, and just a good hardworking town. There's some riffraff that each town always has, but I think in general just good hardworking people. And mom and dad were the same type of just middle class, blue collar, and definitely shaped how we grew up.
Right. And did you grow up playing only football or did you play all sorts of other sports?
He was a huge baseball fan. I mean, loved Cal Ripken, Don Mattingly. That was kind of the initial dream. And then right around eighth grade, I had this pretty sizable growth spurt and got a little clumsy, as they say, and got kicked out of shortstop and over to first base. And didn't dig baseball as much anymore when you're kind of not in the action.
That's right. And then, so obviously you had a growth spurt and you went from what to what in eighth grade?
If I can recall, I think it was maybe 5'10" in the eighth grade. And then by the start of my ninth grade year, I was 6'3". So I had a pretty big jump there. And, your body's out racing your athletic abilities and your balance and footwork. And then kind of slowly and surely, as I went into football, that was a big reason to, hit the weights and get in the weight room and, starting to get a little hair on your what and get the hormones going, and things started to kind of catch up.
Yeah, I think that growth spurt, that immediate growth spurt you're talking about, I think some sports psychologists unofficially refer to as the giraffe syndrome. I don't know if that's a real thing, but it's essentially the same thing where you just grow very quickly and then you're kind of uncoordinated and then you hope to regain that coordination at a later date.
Yeah. For sure. I mean, and it helped that I have two older brothers that when you're a big, young kid, you always look like you're older than your age. So they're taking me into, Brandon High School when I'm 13 and I'm playing pickup basketball with these, junior and seniors in high school that I kind of look like I maybe fit in, but then when you look up close, I got this baby face, and that quickly taught me, some toughness. And, the rule is, hey, if you're going to come hang out with us, you can't whine, you can't cry, toughen up. So that was kind of a development phase of my life too that the older siblings helped me with.
So I know after Florida, you played in the NFL for a period of time, but what point in time did it crystallize in your mind that was an aspiration that you had that you wanted to play professional football once you got done with your amateur sports playing days?
Yeah, because I think it's always in the back of your head that, if you go to UF, maybe, possibly, but really didn't, I would say, crystallize, like you said, until kind of midway through my sophomore year at UF, because had started playing a bunch, was fortunately playing pretty well. So then you kind of just start putting two and two together, and you're like, well, if the guy I'm playing against and I'm playing well against is about to be drafted, then I think I'm good enough. And then, you keep chasing the dream and keep working hard. And, there's some luck involved too, but I would say, generally speaking, kind of midway through that sophomore season is when my wheels started turning of, hey, this could be something that I could do at the next level.
And obviously, you had great success at the University of Florida. I believe you're a multi-time All-American, a Hall of Fame Gator. But when you first got there, you were just a tall drink of water that needed to put on some weight, right? Like, because you were a boy playing with some men up there in the locker room. Tell me a little bit about that experience when you first arrived on campus in your first interactions with the older players. And of course, now the older players are, 26, 27, 28. I don't know how old those guys on the Indiana team were. Some of them, are coming from 2 and 3 former careers before they play college sports. But back in that day, you were 17 years old, I think, going into the University of Florida because you graduated as a young guy
Yeah.
and getting up there. Tell me about what that was like, the culture shock, so to speak, when you walked into that locker room for the first time.
Yeah, I mean, you go from being a bigger kid on your high school team or your local area, and oddly enough, I'm right now I'm 6'7", 250, which is what I was when I got to UF. So we would all agree, like, not big enough, not strong enough, just physically unfit to play at that SEC level. So when you get there and you got a guy like Zach Pillar who's 6'5", 320, and not 320 of fat, but just a block of a man. And, Zach Sedalis, Cooper Carlisle, Ben Brown. I mean, all these guys that are just, you look at me and you look at them and go, one of these guys don't belong here. So I think, too, competition usually brings the best out of people. Wanting to eventually get to where those guys are at was kind of that barometer that you set. So for me, it was get in the weight room, eat until you basically pop, always carrying around a protein shake. Or, I'll never forget, really the way I put on a lot of the weight initially is I'd set an alarm every morning for 2 a.m. and have a protein shake and a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and then go right back to bed. Don't recommend that maybe now as far as like a healthy habit, but it was what I had to do to put the weight on because, the metabolism was running it here and then we're burning the same amount of calories. So it's a math equation, and just worked my butt off to try to get the physical and get the weight and just try to get to their level some way, somehow.
Yeah, because those guys you mentioned just a second ago, those guys, they have no shot of ever being 250 pounds.
I mean, those guys are just, big, huge, hulking guys. Like, I'm a tall guy. I'm not a big, wide body. I'm not gonna try to say I'm gonna impress you on the bench press, but hopefully my athleticism is how and why I would kind of help the team out.
Yeah, and obviously you did help the team out. I believe you guys won 2 SEC championships where
Just
oh,
when we lost one.
okay.
One, lost one.
Okay, you lost the one to, was it Alabama?
Alabama, yep,
And you also, I believe it was your last year with the Gators, you guys were contending for a national title, which was ultimately upended by, I say 9/11, because it was essentially 9/11, which caused the Tennessee game to be moved to the end of the year. And then
yep,
Darnell Dockett twisted Ernest Graham's knee in the bottom of the pile, allegedly.
yep.
And then we didn't have Ernest for that Tennessee game, and we had a kind of a lopsided one-dimensional offense. And then ultimately Tennessee beat us, and y'all went on to beat Maryland in the Orange Bowl.
Yeah. No, it was, definitely one of those years that shoulda, woulda, couldas. I mean, even given the fact that we had lost a game earlier in the year, at the midway point and then clawed our way back into that national title contention. I mean, if my wife were in here right now, she would give you a laundry list of all the reasons why she still is a disgruntled Gator fan, because she was all set to go out to the Rose Bowl, and she had a really good friend that was going to Pepperdine, and, I mean, they had this whole I mean, it was all set up. I mean, it was gonna be a fairy tale ending. And I remind people too, like, I wanna preface this, I'm not gonna sit here and say we would have beat the 2001 Miami Hurricane team. I think we would have, but I'm not gonna, go to Vegas and say we definitely would have hammered them because they were a great team. I definitely know we would have given them a lot better game than the Nebraska Cornhuskers did, that's for sure. But that's how
Yeah,
sports goes sometimes.
no, I remember that Tennessee game vividly because obviously my brother was on the team with you that day, and I was actually on the field before the game because it was senior day for him.
Yeah.
And we had my parents had set up a big tailgate across on the top of the O'Connell Center, where my parents did all their tailgates, and they had a big spread laid out. And when all the players came over after the game, it was basically like going to a funeral.
I think given the fact that we knew how talented we were at home. We had just beat FSU, so for a lot of guys like myself, it was the first time in my 4 years that I beat our nasty rival. So just and then again, like, hey, we beat Tennessee. We go to the SEC championship, which we were gonna play LSU, which we had beat them earlier in the year. I think it was like 45-10 or something crazy. So in our heads, we may be looking ahead. And yeah, to your point, I mean, having Ernest out was a huge blow to our offense because he was such a great runner and tough runner, and giving us those extra yards, 1,000-yard rusher. We end up losing 32-34. And yeah, it was definitely very vivid memories of that. Probably the worst loss in my career of any game, any sport.
I mean, in addition to that, I believe it was Travis Henry that was running the ball for Tennessee that night, and I think he went off.
Travis Stevens, so even worse. Like, it's just a little, I mean, not that he wasn't a good player, but it definitely didn't seem like the guy who's gonna rip off almost 200 yards on us at home.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry to dredge up bad past memories, but, that is part of what has made you the person that you are today. And playing at that level for the University of Florida and playing for Steve Spurrier and playing on championship caliber teams, like what about that experience do you carry forward into your business life today that, that is just lessons that you learned from being in that environment?
I think one is always that, and coach says this all the time, is whether it's a good mindset or attitude to go in and attack business or a game or how you go about it is you gotta hate losing more than you love winning. And so just I don't want to say you're driven out of fear, but just it gnaws at you to lose a game, to lose an account for you and the league, like to lose a case, just to lose. Because when you win, it's almost like okay, I did my job. Like that's what we're supposed to do. So I think I've always taken that with anything I've done and how I go about my goals and things I'm setting is like this is the non-negotiable. Like we don't lose. Like we're gonna get things done. And I think carrying that forward through my entire life and trying to pass it on to my boys and how you go about things. And yes, I am aware that you're gonna lose sometimes, but I think that gnawing at you of the aftermath of losing drives you further, at least for me, than the win. Because all right, you won. Okay, well now you gotta do it again. So just
Absolutely, and I think one of the takeaways, from exactly what you said is, you are going to lose, but in the event that you do lose, you wanna be able to look back and ensure that you did everything possible to not lose, and
yeah,
it's the lack of preparation or, like, the what ifs that will keep you up at night going
yeah.
forward rather than, you're gonna lose some things, that's gonna happen.
Right. Yeah, and I think in general, I think human nature is people don't like experiencing hardship. So if it motivates you to stay away from it, great. If that's how you make sure that you win because you hate losing so much, great. But I know for us and the way Coach Spurrier was and all of us, I mean, we won a game and it was kind of like, all right, hey, give yourself a high five, but move on to the next one, and I think that mentality keeps you hungry and it keeps you motivated. So you're not always just sitting around and, looking at what you did last week.
Yeah, and obviously you played at Florida, then you went on to play in the NFL, you played for the Jaguars and a couple other teams, played a little bit in Canada, and then you ultimately got injured and retired from professional football and transitioned into your professional life. Tell me what that experience was like because I know as a Division I athlete, while you're there, while you're in the program, and especially, once you're in the NFL, your life is kind of on a schedule that's planned and prepared for you, right? I always
Mhm.
analogize the reentry into civilian society similar to maybe someone that's left the military where they've been on a
Sure.
regiment their entire life. And then basically when they're done with the military, it's like, okay, now go do life. And there's
Mm.
not a rule book or a playbook for life. There's not somebody managing your day to day. So tell me how you went from that transition of being in that regimented day to day lifestyle for so long and transitioned into your business life.
Yeah, I would think that's kind of the biggest hurdle is your identity. I mean, you like you said, I mean, you've been for me since I was a 14-year-old kid to a 28-year-old man, it was football. It was, you do the weights in the off season, you try to get better at your 40. Maybe you're transitioning from high school to college, or now you're transitioning from a redshirt freshman to hope you get in the starting lineup. You're going from being a really good player at your college team and now getting drafted. And so it's all these kind of, like you said, pretty much systematic processes that you just kind of jump in the stream, work your tail off. You kind of know, okay, well, here's the steps to success in that arena. And then when either injuries, age, coaching change, or whatever, when something changes and now you're spit out of the stream, you're kind of looking around going, where's my jersey? Where's my helmet? Where's my locker? And it's not there. So I think that identity crisis, if you will, it probably hits some guys harder than others. For me in particular, I think because my nature, I'm a doer and like let's get going. So I mean, I retired in February of 2008, and then in April of 2008, I took a job with a med device company. I have zero clue what sales was about. Had zero clue of other than my own injuries and some of the things I'd learned about my anatomy. Like, don't know what goes on in the operating room. Don't even know if it's a good fit for me. But like I said, I interviewed with a wealth management guy with Prudential in Tampa, and then I interviewed with a company that was looking for a rep in the Tampa area. And I just thought, you know what? This seems a little more fast paced. This seems a little more competitive. Everything I heard, interactions with some high level people and the doctors. So for me, for better or worse, I tend to make decisions pretty quickly, which can be good and can be bad. But ultimately, I'm always a believer that I think activity breeds productivity. So I've always taken that mindset. So the identity thing, I didn't want to sit there and linger on because I saw some other buddies that hung on to it, wouldn't acknowledge it, wouldn't face the music. And I just said, I'm not going to be one of those guys. And, when you got a new home and I think McLean was 8 or 9 months and my wife looked at me saying, hey, you better figure something out, because we were fortunate with some finances early in life, but it wasn't going to be enough to just sit at the house and, do nothing for the remainder of our days. So finding a way to support our family was a big motivator too.
And you were, not fortunate enough to participate in the NIL money that some
No,
athlete.
no, me and your
Yeah,
brother were not, we're getting, I think, free haircuts and some, chicken wings, for free.
let you into a bar every once in a while because of who you were, but that was about it. And that's it. That's one thing I want to talk to you about is the advent with NIL. And I was speaking with somebody about this the other day, and there's certainly positives to what's going on in the college football arena, obviously. But there's a bunch of different ways how they could have done it. But really, I think, in my opinion, I want to get your thoughts on it. The net negative that I see is that it's almost like in the sport today that you don't get to see that athlete that you love as a freshman develop over 4 years. Like I think about this, like imagine Tim Tebow as a freshman. We win the national championship with him, beat Ohio State that freshman year. Tim Tebow probably not a Gator the next year. Maybe Tim Tebow is because he's a super crazy ultra Gator,
Mm,
but that type of athlete, all the colleges are going to be coming and knocking and, with bags of money in hand saying, come play for us, come
yeah.
play for us. And you don't get that emotional investment of watching Tim Tebow grow into who he became over that 4 years and saying, oh man, I can't wait to see him next season. Can't wait that's really the net negative I see. But what are your thoughts on
No, I agreed wholeheartedly. My brother and I talk about it all the time is the old days of here's Will Roberts from Pasco High that came in as a young freshman, and wasn't quite ready physically. And his redshirt year, he started making some plays here and there, and then like that is gone, which is unfortunate because I think not knowing it firsthand, but I just feel like guys that are playing now are not getting what I think is just like the sweet spot of your life of like the college experience. I mean, having friends, like yourself and your brother, Zach. I mean, all these guys that we all hang out with. I mean, not telling your listeners too much, but we're on this text strand that I mean, we talk to each other daily, weekly, if not daily. And I just feel like these young men in college now are pretty much kind of just having the experience that I would say you have more in the NFL, where it's very transactional. It's a reluctance to really try to, get some deep rooted ties because you're either looking for the next big payday, which I'm all for. Like, hey, pay them as much as that you can. Like they deserve it. Not griping about that or not saying why not me, but yeah, there is that aspect. I just don't think that the college football that we know it or how we've grown up to love it is gone. And not that's bad, but it's never going to be kind of what we all knew about it or how we, grew up and every Saturday going to the Gator game because you wanted to see how Fred Taylor progressed from his freshman year to his junior year. I mean, it just they're jumping around. It's hot potato. So yeah, it's not a good system for sure.
Yeah, and it's even almost even more evident in college basketball when the Gators won the national championship, I think last 2 years ago or whatever it was, and they showed, like, the starting 5, and they were all from different places the previous year. So, in basketball, obviously, you have a smaller group of people, and you can bond and get the team together a little bit better, but, to your point about football, the bonding, like, those days, like, those hot days in the summer in Gainesville in August where you really don't wanna do it, but you guys are all building towards something great, and then if you just up and left and went to Michigan, the next year, or Jesse Palmer up and went to Miami, or Brock Berlin up and went to Miami. Wait, that did happen. Just like you lose that bond of being together with those guys and everybody developing together and rowing the boat towards a common goal and seeing what you can do together. And I think we don't get to see that anymore. And it's just, as a fan, it's disappointing.
Yeah, and I've talked to a few of the college coaches that I've got some good relationships with, and I asked them like, "How in the heck do you build culture?" Because one minute you got 90 guys on December 31st, and then on February 2nd you got 45 new people. I mean, don't see how you do it because culture is built by your leaders and people who have been in an organization or been on a team for at least in my experience in college football, 2, 3, 4 years. So those people set the pace, lay the expectation, have the talks with the new guys or, the freshmen coming in or like, like in a business sense, the new employees. But the guys that are being able to win a national championship now in this day and age, like maybe they're doing even better job than some of our old coaches, the Spurriers and Bowdens and because they're having to like do this like right now, like time up. They don't get a 2, 3, 4 year window. It's like you better strike now. So I'm not jealous of it, but I mean, how do you build culture now in this arena? Is maybe they've got some better tricks up their sleeves, but I don't see how they do it.
Well, I think the ultimate way to build culture is you win a championship. And then for those teams that don't win a championship, they don't have the strongest culture as maybe the team that won the last time. And I guess also the coaches nowadays do have that added benefit in the offseason. They're like, we need a left tackle. Well, Guess who has one? Georgia. We're going to go get that left tackle, and you can almost assemble your roster year to year instead of, in the historic construct of when we get a new coach, he's like, well, at least give him 3 years so his recruiting class can come through. It's basically you got 1 to 2 years, to prove yourself.
They got about a year and a half to get things at least better than they inherited, for sure.
Yeah, and it's just a general thought I had on the idea of like, obviously I believe that the players should be paid because the NCAA and the coaches are making hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars. I mean, and the players are rowing the boat and have been for years without getting anything. Obviously, you get a college degree. Everybody doesn't obtain that degree. It's kind of the promise. But my thought is you do some sort of profit sharing agreement and you say, look, if you stay 3 years at the university, you get 75% vesting, 4 years, 100% vest, and then you can draw on that money 10 years down the line, kind of like an IRA sort of thing. If you have to take the money
Mhm.
out early, there's going to be a penalty if you have to have a surgery or your mom's sick or whatever. But that way, everybody gets some money. There's not disparity between what you're getting and what the kicker's getting, because at that level, the team matters more than the individual. You can do that individual thing once you get to the NFL. But, when you got the quarterback showing up in a Lamborghini and then you got the left tackle showing up on the scooter like you used to, that doesn't build unity in the team either. And then you say, look, this money is for after you're done, whatever you're doing next. If it's the NFL or if it's something else, it's going to be there for a safety net. And you'll be glad that it's there when you get there. But of course, under this system, it keeps the team together at least for those 3 or 4 years and allows that cohesive nature to build while you still get the athletes the money that they're owed from the system that they're putting so much work and blood and sweat into.
Yeah, I think this entitlement, and I don't want to go on the soapbox of, back in my day, but I just don't get how the entitlement of hey, I'm coming into college as an 18, 19-year-old kid. I haven't proven myself. I just got paid 2 or 3 million bucks. My career, like, and I don't want to point any particular player out, but we've seen it on a bunch of teams here lately where either the quarterback wasn't who we hoped they would be, or the receiver that translate to what we thought or predicted, and then now they move around, and then they eventually just wash out, or they're just not good enough to play at the next level. I just think there's got to be some sort of systematic approach, and the only thing I've kind of came up with, because I was with you on the investment IRA kind of mindset, 3-year vesting, but because the toothpaste has been out of the tube, you can't put it back in. I was hoping more they would kind of do a hard reset like the NFL did. I don't know if it was 10 or 15 years ago, when they're like, look, we can't keep paying the Jamarcus Russells and the Sam Bradfords $80 million and they never perform, coming in their rookie year. I was hoping, or maybe they will, kind of set like a hard cap on all the incoming freshmen, top tier quarterback rankings, whatever. Hey, this quarterback, we can pay him 400K. The top left tackle, we can pay him to whatever the numbers are. And then once they're here, if they perform, then we'll escalate that number. Then we'll, and Coach Spurrier had kind of an idea where he made the comment, I think he said was, hey, let's go back to recruiting them the way we used to. And then once they're here, then we can start paying them after they perform. Like, I think it's a win-win for everyone then, because in that way, you'll see who wants to stay and be committed to the program and help build something. And then hopefully those right type of kids come in and all of them start performing. And there's not a booster that wouldn't mind shelling out double what they're paying them now, because they're performing. They're actually, doing what you would hope they would do. It's that the ROI, I guess, where I kind of scratch my head, but there would be some ROI in that type of investment or that setup. But whether they do that or not, probably not, because like I said, they've already set the precedent, from being in the legal world. Like, it's hard to go backwards when this has already been where you started.
Yeah, once the money's injected into the system, it's very hard to get it out. And the other thing is, to your point, where they're paying these incoming freshmen that haven't proven themselves $2, $3, $4 million, whatever the rate is, that has to be a disincentive to them performing and turning into the better athlete they could potentially be. Because historically, the carrot was always, you're going to get to the NFL and you're going to get the money then.
Yeah.
So work your tail off, like you say, while you're here, turn into the best athlete that you can be. And then you're going to hit the jackpot at the end of the rainbow. Right now, you're getting it before you put the work in. So if I'm a 19-year-old kid and someone hands me $2 million, I may stop showing up to practice.
Yeah, that part, I think, and Coach Summerall, I think he said it in a press conference. They asked him like, "Hey, have you found it harder to motivate these young men now than you did in the past?" And he's like, "Heck no." He said, "Now I just fill out something. Hey, you're getting paid to do it. You don't like it, hit the road." I agree with him, but then I also know you see the instances where the kid hits the road and then he somehow gets more money from like so again, not keep kind of throwing it to you, but like the contracts have zero teeth on them. Like those kids can do whatever, whenever, how. Like nobody's held accountable, which is where I scratch my head. Of I could sign with UF today, and Georgia could send me a text and sweet talk me the following day, and then I could just tell Florida, hey, you know what? I got to do what's best for me and my family. I'm going to go to Georgia for a million more than you offered.
Yeah, the aspect of enforcing college players' ability to play where they would like to. I mean, it's just a hot potato because a contract is only as good as your ability to enforce it and your desire to enforce it. So, let's say a Gator player, let's say he does have a contract and he says, "You know what? I'm going to Georgia." So is the University of Florida going to file an action against him and prevent this kid from quote pursuing his dream? That's just a PR nightmare for the
Yeah,
Gators and the NCAA, and that's kinda how we got in this situation in the first place because they did they did this NIL thing because of all the PR disasters that were going on with the NCAA and, the video games and all the things that came out of that, and they're like, "You know what? We've been greedy and they got their hands slapped, and then
yeah,
this is basically their mea culpa as to what they've been doing for the last 20 years when you were playing." And I analogize it to essentially how they rolled out the medical marijuana industry in California. It might have been a good idea in theory, but the rollout was disastrous,
uh,
and similar to what we're doing here. But now that we've rolled it out, like you said, the toothpaste is out of the tube. Now we're looking to the federal government to potentially get involved. And I just don't know if college sports needs to be regulated by the federal government. And the other issue is it kind of drove this from the beginning was how the coaches get paid. And obviously the coaches were making an obscene amount of money and continue to make an obscene amount of money. And then up in, at the end of the season, sometimes right in the middle of the end of the season, as recent memory will tell us from Mr. Kiffin, the coach just up and leaves his entire team to go to a new job. And then you're going to turn around and tell the players that they can't leave. That's
yeah,
like, talk a little bit more out of both sides of your sides of your mouth, why don't you? So I think ultimately that was kind of, another straw that broke the camel's back in this situation was just the Jimbo Fishers of the world, where he goes to A&M and gets, what was it, $100 million in guaranteed money and then gets essentially fired within a year. And then they have to give him that money. And that's coming out of the institution. Probably some taxpayers were involved with paying that bill
sure,
in Texas.
yeah,
And then I've always said, similar to the NIL structuring of letting the players get a little bit of money and like hold it in trust, like the coaches, it should be built around you're going to have a base salary and then it's all going to be wins and performance bonus based.
performance,
If you win 8 games, we're going to get X. If you win a January 1 bowl game, you're going to get this. If you win an SEC championship, you get Y. Your total package could be up to, $50 million, but we're certainly not going to guarantee that. Like just like
yeah,
that freshman player you were talking about, you need to show us a little bit
yeah,
before we write that giant check to you. And then once you leave and then we're paying you and then you're getting paid by 3 other teams after the fact. I mean, that's kind of what makes, I think, fans go crazy and they're like, what is even going on right now? I think it was Charlie Weiss was getting paid by 3 or 4 different teams at the same time. And he's not alone in that situation. It's a good job if you can get it. I mean, I don't know another job in the world where you can go essentially fall flat on your face and be a statistical and absolute failure. And then somebody gives
so
you
good.
40 or $50 million on your way out the door.
I think baseball is the only other the sport that has a similar setup where you can sign a $500 million contract and 3 years later decide you want to, eat and gain 50 pounds and not be able to swing a bat or throw a ball as hard, and they still have to pay you. I think that I know of. Maybe basketball too.
So once you got done with the University of Florida, you obviously went to the NFL. Tell me what was the difference between your time, in the locker room with the Gators and then your time at the locker room with the Jaguars when you first got there? Was it the same kind of like, man, I don't feel like I belong here because these guys are even bigger than the last guys? Because I think you were playing, or I think you were recruited or drafted to take the spot of who was it, Tony Baselli at the Jaguars?
Yeah, so he had been injured and they let him go in the expansion draft, and I would quickly say not even capable of replacing him. So I was just more the next guy up. But I think in the sense of not thinking you didn't belong because at that point you're kind of physically on par. Obviously, they have more experience in the games in the arena. But I think the biggest learning curve there was now your friends and your coworkers are 30-year-old guys with a wife and 2 kids and, mortgage and stress. So when you come in as a rookie, I don't know about the percentage, but let's just say the majority of rookies are either maybe newly married with, little to no kids or maybe small kids. So you don't have as much stress because you're 21, 22 years old. You just signed a pretty good contract. You don't have student loans. So you kind of have to quickly either find a team to help you manage your day to day because you've got some idle time and you've got some money too. So there's some learning curves, and hopefully you are who you surround yourself with. So if you try to get some wiser, not necessarily old people, but some people who can help you navigate that new life that you just stepped into, which I was fortunate to have some people around me, and then also being in Jacksonville, still close to home, still close to Gainesville. So there was some familiarity in that sense where I wasn't necessarily looking to see all the new big shiny things because I kind of already saw them and I already kind of knew about them. So it wasn't like this, brand new world that I was stepping into from a social aspect. But it's definitely the transition is more about the social and the outside of football aspect. Buying a car for your wife and getting a mortgage and looking for a house and things. You're like when you're freshman, sophomore, junior in college, you're like, man, I hope I can just find a lease where they're okay with four different names being on the lease when you're only allowed to have three, stuff like that.
Yeah, I can imagine, coming out of, the University of Florida at 21, signing an NFL contract and having someone argue some life-changing money in your pocket, and, there's, certainly opportunity for making mistakes and, doing the wrong thing, but obviously you had a pretty good head on your shoulders. You were a business major at Florida, business administration, and so I think even while you were playing in the NFL, you still had your eye on what's going to happen after I'm done playing football, right? You knew that day was coming.
Yeah, I think I was always, again, kind of talking about that motivation by fear or failure or, losing. I think in the back of my head, I always know like, hey, your goal is to get to a point where you don't have to work or you don't have to kind of transition into something else. But statistically speaking, that's not going to happen. It's I don't know what the actual number is, but I'm just going to say less. I would say less than probably a tenth of guys who come to the NFL are able to walk away on their own accord and never have to pick up a new job title the rest of their lives. The ones that do, great for them and happy for them. But I was always just kind of very aware that, hey, let's be smart with what we get right now. Let's hope that we could get to that point in our career to do that. But if we don't, having a degree, being from Florida would be helpful in my career path or whatever the next phase was.
In transitioning into your business life after football, who would you say influenced you most and provided you that backdrop for your success?
I talked a bunch with guys that like Travis McGriff, some of the older guys that I've kind of known that had started in some new lives. I would say buddies from college days that weren't able to go into the NFL and talking to them like, hey, what are you doing right now? What's something that you think would be a fit for my personality or my background? Because I think that's always too where again when you talk about or we talked about our identity crisis, if you will, like you always have this reluctance of like, man, if I go into a job interview, it's kind of cool to talk about all this stuff, but then they actually want to have some sort of skill set and like, hey, we're it's awesome that you're able to block, Peter Bolware or Javon Curse or Kevin whoever, but we don't really need you to pass that in this job. Like, can you critically think? Are you able to articulate a product and sell it? Are you able to negotiate a deal for some sort of piece of equipment? So all those things quickly get brought up, and I was just always pretty transparent and met it head on. Like, look, I don't have any of those skills that you're talking about right now, but I will tell you the things that I do have as kind of my bedrocks, and I know I'll be able to add those with the opportunity. So it's reaching out to people who, again, don't try to just go reinvent the wheel. Like ask people who are already doing it and have kind of followed your path, and say, hey, how'd you do it, or what mistakes did you do that I should avoid, and and then some people back home and Coach Callahan and other people in my life that have always been big mentors for me of just like, hey, what do I do next? I'm a little bit confused. I've got a degree, got a good attitude, willing spirit, but what do you think is a good role and kind of how to navigate and get a game plan together?
Yeah, and obviously you're blessed with some physical gifts, but to be as successful at the levels that you were, I mean, obviously you have to work hard and you have that work ethic. And so that is core to who you are. And so that's not going to be something that you turn off. You just transition that work ethic from the football field to the business world. And I think that's what's carried you and sustained you forward, whether or not you didn't always know how to pass block either, but you figured that out. You had some
Mhm.
intelligent feet, you had a big wingspan. And then once you got into the business world, that work ethic that you had developed that carried you all the way to the NFL, which is, you know, I don't know how many people make it to the NFL, but it has to be a very small group of folks. And then you get into the business world. And I know when you got in the medical device sales aspect, you started very small and you're able to grow that into something very large over time. So just tell me about like, the beginning of that and then how you transitioned over to Baldwin Insurance Group.
Yeah, so with med device, that industry it's competitive. A lot of different device companies that are out there. So from that aspect, you have a pretty wide open playing field, but you also realize like you have to be a value add and differentiate yourself than just being somebody who could bring in a widget. And so quickly in that career, I learned there's ways to bring more value into a room or into the arena than just saying, well, hey, my product is XYZ and here's what it does. It's how do you have them take their focus off the product and focus more on the team and or yourself to now say like, no matter what I'm bringing in or no matter what I have, you or the people and the team is more valuable than the product. So that was something that I enjoyed. Started off as just an associate rep like most people do, and thankfully was in a really unique territory in Tampa, Florida that's got a lot of innovation. It's got the university aspect and health and medicine, research. There's a lot of big players in this area in Tampa. So there's the volume is here too, and just some really good doctors that say they allow you to work in their world because it's a special world and it's unique in the fact that surgeons are trusting the company and the rep to guide them and to give them some insight. Because, like I've told multiple people, look, I know why I got into the University of Florida, and I know why that doctor got into the University of Florida. Like we're on two different SAT scores, so I would never try to tell someone I'm as smart as that doctor. But if they've done 12 or 13 rotator cuff cases a month, maybe I've seen 48 in a month. So you try to take that aspect of, okay, here's what we've seen, here's what we're seeing, here's some trouble spots, and then again, differentiate yourself and bring some more added value. And oddly enough, I maybe because of the injuries I had and just kind of having a little bit of knowledge, but I quickly learned how to, I'll say, troubleshoot in that arena, which is where I think my bigger value add was to the team and the environment because 80 to 90% of the time, an ACL kind of goes like clockwork, like everything. And we're going to drill the femoral hole, we're going to drill in the tibia, we're going to strip the graft, we're going to prep the graft, we're going to, drill this hole to this depth and this diameter. But there are instances where the bone's not quality is not as good, or there was something that was unassessed and didn't show up on an MRI, or, pick your poison. I was always real, maybe again, because of the sport I was in and the background that I came from, like a doctor getting upset and starting to scream and holler, 98% of the room would get all, pins and needles. And I would just kind of get closer and be like, hey, doc, what are we doing? Like, I didn't get scared in that environment. So I think that was helpful because the surgeon was like, all right, this guy's taking it. He's not shying away from it. He's coming back for more. We understand like in the heat of the moment, we may say things that not giving him a free pass, but just in general, like, when it's an emotional time, you may say something you didn't necessarily mean, but we move on from it. So anyhow, I think that always was very helpful for me in there. And I just like doing it. I loved kind of being in those really hard cases where people are like, oh God, Mike, can you do this case today? Because I just don't feel comfortable with it. And like anything else, you can fake it till you make it. I think a lot of times it's how you present yourself and how you say the words. You can be that kind of, duck on the water where everything looks cool and calm up here. And only your feet are just going a mile a minute. So I just in that arena, I think just being, I always say like just being even keeled, not too high, not too low was very helpful. And through the whole process, went from a small role to then getting a bigger role, then getting a bigger territory, then getting multiple territories and being successful in it and building a team. When our owner decided to retire, I was then able to purchase and buy my territory that I had been managing and some more down south. And then I was the owner for the distributorship for 6 of the 16 years that I did med device. And it was phenomenal. I mean, just, grew a team from 22 salespeople to when we sold it back to the manufacturer, we had 92 people. So, just a bigger team, obviously more moving parts. And I think really for me, a few reasons why I decided to get out of the industry was one, it was, the business operation kind of side of it was changing. And what I bought into and came into 6 years prior was the way that I wanted to run my business, and not for worse, but because the manufacturer wanted us to do it a different way. I just knew that wasn't how I wanted to continue. So we just parted amicably. Was fortunate again to have some financial stuff that came with that. And again, it wasn't enough to just sit back and not do anything, but took some time off and kind of reassess like, hey, where do I want to be, or kind of how do I want to, what's the next career I want to move into? Talk to a few people that I had become friends with and looked for guidance. And I said, look, it's relationships game. You're going to learn new things. You're going to focus on some niche industries or some specific industries. And then I got into insurance, and the Baldwin Group gave me an opportunity. This August will be 3 years, and it's been been a really good learning curve. It's like anything else. It's relationships. It's how you respond to people's needs. Because I always say, like, look, anybody can put a piece of paper in front of a business owner and say, hey, I'll save you $10 or in this premium or this policy. But when the stuff starts happening or bad things happen, which happens in insurance, and it's a lot of contracts and legal language and the back and forths, it's being able to be a value add in those situations that I enjoy.
What is your particular niche at Baldwin?
So ironically, and maybe because it's like anything else, when you're connected to certain people or industries, you'll probably start, favoring those sides. So the three that I've got the most experience and rapport with are private education, Christian schools, nonprofits, and then the construction contractor space. So I've been fortunate in my brief career to have some people that have allowed me to be involved with their teams, be a partner with them, understand where their business is going, where it's heading. And in those three particular verticals, there's some similarities, but a lot of different moving parts too. So that's where I enjoy kind of that learning curve and getting into the nitty gritty language of the contract. And not that I'm going to try to be a lawyer or a legal expert, but the more I can understand it and then articulate it back to the client to give them advice. And we're an advisor. That's our title. It's our role. And I always kind of equate it to, if I came to you for legal advice and you didn't give me any, I'd be frustrated. And when people come to us for risk management and insurance advice, and we just tell them, well, I don't know, you pick it. It's like, no. That's not why I need you. Like, I don't need you to tell me, well, if I tell you this answer, then you're going to sue me later, which can happen. But my mindset is be the advisor that you say you are. And if you don't know, then tell them that too. So I think that's where I think being transparent and being honest with people goes a long way.
Is there a particular aspect about your industry that is misunderstood? And if so, how would you clarify that?
Yeah, I was very naive to the fact of, I'll say, painting the picture, or what we call the narrative, of creating the narrative for the companies. As a business owner, when I needed my insurance, and I had a good broker, I just basically was like, hey, here's what I'm told I'm needed. Here's what I've been told I have to have. Here's the limits I have to have. Help me out. Now, knowing kind of the negotiation side of the equation, where me as the broker is interacting with the carrier, with the underwriters, with the actuarials. If you don't paint the picture and you don't give that carrier a mountain of information, they can only rate that client or that industry off of what they know. So I was just naive when I first started about, wow, there is a lot more that goes into why your premium is what it is versus what it could be. And then probably more importantly, or just as important, of the language and it's a contract. You say policy, but it's essentially, it's a contract where one company is deciding to take on the risk for a set amount, but then that company that they're providing the coverage for needs to understand, hey, do you realize that you're a general contractor and your policy, there is an exclusion for residential work? Well, I didn't know that. Well, it's kind of odd because you've been doing about 60% of your business is residential work. It's things like that where there's so many, I'll say, kind of bad actors that they just get a policy. The business owner is naive. They think they got a general liability policy with $2 million limit. I'm good to go. Like, hey, and I don't wish anything bad to happen to that business owner, but that's when you kind of uncover some pretty big hurdles for that person to get past. And God forbid they have a claim that arises and they weren't covered. That's where you really find out, like, you see some real feelings start to come out of the equation. So all in all, I think that two parts of the equation of creating the narrative and how you present the prospect or the business to the carriers, and then just making sure that contracts are all language driven. I mean, that better than anybody else on the podcast here. It's just you better know what's in there and you better know what's not in there.
Yeah, and I imagine that's a phone call you never wanna field is when one of your clients does have a claim, and then you have to break the news to them, "By the way, that's not covered," when they thought it might have been. So, obviously,
Yep.
what you're talking about, the more you understand about your client's business, the better you can put together a policy that's gonna protect them as to their specific business needs instead of, you know, a fly-by-night operation that's going to just basically check the box for them, like, I analogize it to where you need car insurance in order to get your driver's license, and so you can go out and get just any kind of policy in order to show the DMV that you're insured, but what that actually covers, like, who actually knows and whether or not it really carry the day when you need it, that's a question you don't wanna answer after the fact.
Yeah, I always try to, when I'm talking to a business owner, and like if I was, trying to sell you professional liability, policy for D&O and all this stuff that I wanted for the audience with, but you focus on tax and business law. I could come to you if I needed a will and trust or some other legal contract, but that's not what you specialize in. So I think that's where we try to differentiate ourselves in our industry of like, hey, I could get you a homeowner's policy. Like I'm legally allowed with my license to get that and negotiate that for you. But I would also tell you, like, I don't work in that arena. I don't focus on it. So you would probably be better served to work with a colleague or find a company that does that. And I think again, that's where I always kind of try to correlate like the similarities of one business to the next. Like a general contractor is allowed to build pretty much anything that he can think of, but he would probably be better served to stick with you're way better at building hotels than you are building restaurants, or you're way better at building a surgery center than you are at building a multi-million-dollar home. So I think that's where and I try to like narrow the field down. Like I could do any type of insurance and risk, but I try to focus on those three arenas.
Right. What, habit has made you successful throughout your life? Like something that you can, draw upon, something that is always like something that you try to do. What would that be?
I would say I didn't have the habit, but as I've grown and matured, game planning and sitting down and working through a process. I am a big believer that sometimes people can overanalyze and plan too long, and you sit down and try to have the best game plan, and then sit there for 6 months, and it's dialed into the T. And then you go to implement it on month 7, and the entire arena and landscape has changed. So I say all that by I'm a big believer in just start doing something. Activity. I'm a big believer. Activity produces productivity. Like, hey, I don't know how to sell insurance. Hey, do you know how to pick the phone up? Do you know how to go to that business owner's door and knock? You may get 9 no's, or you may hear 20 no's that day, but just be active and work a process, work a plan. It could be a bad plan, but it's better than no plan. And the way asking people like, "Hey, could you look at my plan? Like, I feel like I'm hitting some roadblocks, or I feel like I'm not getting past this," and they can tweak it and help you get more dialed in and more efficient with it.
Nice. And, what's the best advice you think you've ever received about business or life, football, anything like that?
Yeah, I don't want to say it, but my old boss says, "Learn how to eat shit sandwiches." Like in business and life and sports, like it's not always going to be the greatest, the best. Your outcomes are not always going to be the championship, the title, the trophy. Like you're going to have some bad days. Get over it. Like next play, and keep coming back. Like just I've heard this the other day, and I think it was either Jocko Willick or like one of those guys that I guess they're saying or what they said always to either their group or their leaders or platoon was somebody was complaining about some op they went on, and his comment only said one word. He'd go, "Good. Man, we had this guy and he didn't do this right, and he caused us to have to march 3 more miles. Good. Like just get over it. Like, it's just part of life. It's not going to be easy. Nobody promised you it to be easy. But the minute you can get comfortable with being uncomfortable and gonna have a lot probably more bad days or hard days than you are easy ones, you'll be better served for it.
That's right. And what defines success for you now?
I think it goes back to me just trying to be a value add to your customers, your friends, your families, the people you interact with. I think money obviously is one of the indicators of whether you are or aren't successful. But I think if that's all you focus on, you're going to be, unsatisfied and unhappy. So I think if you just try to say, hey, if I can add some value, it really, in anything you do, if you're helping some kids out at a high school coaching, hey, you're giving back, or you're, a person that you're not a big mentor, but you've got some finances. I heard a quote one day from a guy who helped us really big financially, built the field house at Armwood, and he told the group of people, and you could tell he was very, kind of a introvert and didn't want any fanfare. But the only thing he said is like, money's like manure. If you pile it up, it stinks. If you spread it out, it helps things grow. And I think just trying to be always mindful of just helping, adding some value, and don't need to have a lot of credit or publicity about it is kind of where I think success and how I view success now in my life.
All right. And we're going to move into what I like to call the speed round, Mike. It's just a couple of short answer questions. You can answer them yes or no. If you want to expound on them, feel free to do so. I think you'll understand the questions once you hear them. Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
The moon landing, yes or no?
Yes.
Coke or Pepsi?
Diet Coke.
Aliens.
Maybe.
If you could fly, time travel, or be invisible, which one would you pick and why?
If I could fly private plane or private jet anytime, I'd pick that. And just because I've been fortunate to do it just a couple of times, and it's the only way to travel.
No, I'm saying if you could personally fly.
Oh,
Like, yeah, let's start again. Fly, time travel, or be invisible. Three of these things human beings can't do right now. But if you were gifted one of those skills, which one would it be? But flying private is nice too. I'm not going to discount that.
maybe I'd go back to fly as long as I can put 5 or 6 people on my back and fly around. But yeah, I guess fly.
Well, I understand the flying private and also the ability to fly is important to a guy that's 6'7" because there's not a lot of legroom on a plane. What's your favorite food?
Probably my wife's fried chicken,
What is your favorite sport?
football,
What's your favorite hobby?
golf.
So is golf not a sport? It's a trap
No,
question.
it's not. It's not. It's not a sport. I don't care what anyone says. It's not a sport. There are athletes that play golf, but it's not a sport.
It's a high level skill for sure.
Yes.
Does ketchup belong on a hot dog?
No.
What is your favorite movie, book, song, or sequel?
Favorite movie is Shawshank Redemption. Maybe it's a book, I think. Okay, so but I've never read the book, but that's my favorite movie. And what was the other parts?
A favorite book.
My favorite book is probably The Old Man and the Sea.
All right. Favorite sequel.
I'm probably gonna get a lot of heat for this, but I'm a Rocky 5 guy.
I like Rocky 5. My ring's in the street. Tommy Gunn. Yeah. I like Rocky 4 too. Rocky is one of those movies where the sequels, as it progressed, got better. Number 3 with Mr. T was a little bit goofy. Rocky 4 is
Yeah.
obviously a standout. Rocky 2, I think, was better than Rocky 1, but Rocky 1 was very granular and kind of like, it was very real. Like you got that
Yeah.
sense of, where he came from. He was out, collecting money on the streets, breaking people's thumbs, and then became a champion. And then he got the robot butler and got soft, and Apollo had to take him back to the beginning and train him up again.
Here's the only thing that bothers me about the Rocky whatever quintilogy. So when he leaves to go fight Drago in Rocky 4, his son, if you're looking at it, looks like he's probably like 7. When he comes back from Russia, when he lands on the tarmac, his son's all of a sudden 15. Like, I want to know who in their infinite wisdom on the production and directing crew said, let's just, it's almost like National Lampoon's how the kids always either got older or younger somehow.
Yeah, the suspension of disbelief was definitely harmed by the fact of the rapid aging of the child in Rocky 4. Yeah, a lot of people had issue with the fact that how him and Drago, just beat the crap out of each other for 15 rounds and didn't kill one another. What about song?
Oh, probably Humpty Dance.
Oh man, that's is that Digital Underground?
No, Digital Underground.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's a classic. When you're not selling commercial insurance and being a commercial risk advisor, what do you like to do?
Love playing golf, traveling with my wife and kids, just spending time. As I've gotten older, I've become a little more of a homebody. So, just kind of being out of the house and being with them and, hanging
And
out.
one more question: is Coach Summerall the guy?
To be determined. I'm pulling for him 100%, but I'm just so tired of jumping on these bandwagons because the guy's like really good at the press conference or he says something I think is slick or catchy. So I like him. I've got to meet him. Seems like a guy that's going to really do some great things, but I also want to, and he said it too. He's like, Mike, I can win any press conference. He's like, I can win games.
That's right.
So
Yeah,
if he wins games, he's going to be well loved. If he doesn't, like we said earlier, he'll get paid $50 million and go home. So it's not that bad of a deal.
he wins either way, I think.
Absolutely.
Where can people learn more about what you do?
You can go on LinkedIn, check me out. The Baldwin Group is a fantastic company headquartered here in Tampa. Lowry Baldwin, Trevor Baldwin, and their team is just great people, great company. And yeah, just look me up on LinkedIn. That's kind of my only social media aspect. I've got a little Twitter handle now, but it's really oddly enough more for recruiting for my son who'll be a senior in high school. So don't do much on the Twitter feed, but more
Give me your
LinkedIn.
email one more time.
Mike.Pearson at Baldwin dot
All right.
com.
And who is one person you think I should interview next?
Ooh, I don't know if he would give you the space, but Lowry Baldwin, I mean, obviously a selfish plug. He's a pretty dynamic guy, a Tampa guy, really well known. Matt Laporte, I'm actually looking at his little bobblehead here that he gave me, but a really good buddy of mine. Unfortunately, he is the number 2 all-time home run leader now at UF because Jack Caglione took him over. But Matt's done some really, really phenomenal things since his post. I mean, he's, Gator Hall of Famer, first round major league pick. I had a pretty bad career-ending hip injury, went into the insurance world. He was a guy that I leaned on heavily when I picked kind of the route I was going, and then now he's gotten to the private equity world. So he'd be a good one to bring on the show.
Awesome.
Good guy.
Awesome. Well, Mike, thanks so much for taking the time and thanks for coming on Pod Number this afternoon. It's been a real pleasure having you.
Thanks, Will. Appreciate it, man. Enjoy.
Absolutely.